The following is an Operation Podcast production.
The mission of writing the book was actually deeply personal to you.
You're exactly right. I wrote it for myself, but I also wrote it so if people read it, hopefully they wouldn't make the same mistakes I made.
Circling back to this, moment where pets.com had collapsed.
And my marriage collapsed.
And the marriage collapsed.
Yeah, same day. I would say when I started the RealReal, first I did an analytical map of, I knew I wanted to go back into e-commerce. I analyzed what Amazon could do and couldn't do. And one of the areas that I knew they couldn't do was luxury.
Are you ready for a wild ride? I'm Alexis Artin, and I invite you to strap in because this is more than a podcast. This is Look at Me Now.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Look at Me Now. I don't even know what to say about how I was feeling when I was driving here to, which by the way, it's like an hour and a half drive for me sometimes to get here. So this is a real commitment, people. But I was having so many emotions driving here today, not just because I was listening to the Jonas Brothers, which always brings something up in me, but because of who I'm sitting down with today. Personally, this woman is an inspiration and somebody that I feel so humbled to have the opportunity to actually sit down with and have a conversation with and share it with all of you. But publicly, this is the founder of the RealReal. This is Julie Wainwright. She's the author of Time to Get Real, How I Built a $1 Billion Business and Rocked the Fashion Industry. And this story is so much more than somebody who built a $1 billion business and rocked the fashion industry. Yes, she did those things. But it's who she had to be in order to do that. And as somebody who really has dedicated their life to understanding female empowerment, I'm sitting here with a beacon. And I'm so excited to have this conversation and share it with all of you. Julie, thank you for being here. Welcome.
Oh, thank you. Wow, what an intro. Thank you.
I mean, I really, we were talking a little bit off camera before we got rolling here, and you shared a story about this book. And I actually want to start there. I mean, we're going to go back to your story, which is normally where I start, but I actually want to start today with you telling the story about how this book almost didn't happen.
Yeah, I first of all, I wrote the book myself and had a publisher and had a good editor that worked with me. But when it was time to go to the next phase, which was the legal check, I got a note saying, well, I'd have to get a release from everyone I talk about, and if they don't, then they're going to remove all the names. And I thought, that's not the book I set out to write, and I'm not going to get some of the people aren't even alive anymore, but I'm not going to do that because it's my story. And if they're not comfortable, then they're probably not the right publisher. And then I thought, you know what, maybe I don't need to publish this book because it felt great writing it. And maybe I'll just let it lie. It's fine. And then I was in London for a short vacation. And I said as much, by the way, to the publisher before I left. So I said, I'm really not sure about this because the book you bought isn't the book that you want now. And I'm not sure about it, which put them on edge. But anyway, I went off to London. And on the second day, outside the hotel, a young man who was a porter there said, and I'm waiting for an Uber, he goes, I know who you are, and I really hope you write a book someday because your story inspires me, and it means a lot to me. And first of all, I started crying. And he said, no. He said, it's helped me when I was down. I think what you've done for fashion and bringing sustainability is really important. The fact that you started this late. He went on, and I'm like, okay. And I thought, there's my answer. If it matters to one person. And by the way, I never saw him again. I never saw him again the entire time I was there. And you said, well, maybe he wasn't real. And, maybe he wasn't. Maybe
I swear, divine orchestration works in very strange ways. You saw him only once. I'm like, it was some sort of a messenger.
It felt that way.
And it's like, and was he real? I mean, you never saw him again.
No, I never saw him again, but he could have had time. I don't know. But all I know is I took it to heart. And I really felt like if it makes a difference in one person's life, then I should publish it. And then, by the way, the legal review was fine. So no names were changed. So all this buildup from it turned out to be fine. It all turned out to be fine.
Well, it's so interesting because I feel like the story you just shared captures so much of your story. In terms of being so mission oriented, right? The mission of writing the book was actually deeply personal to you. It wasn't about the results or the outcome of getting the book published or, anybody else even seeing it. It was therapeutic for you. It was a mission for you to write it. And then, the mission of actually putting out in the world was to be of service if it can help somebody.
That was the original goal. But then, yes, that was the goal. First I wrote it. You're exactly right. I wrote it for myself. But I also wrote it, and there's a lot of information in it for people. I also wrote it so if people read it, hopefully they wouldn't make the same mistakes I made as I went through the company. So it was also to help. If I would have read this book before I started the RealReal, I would have made different choices. And I hadn't read the kind of book I wanted to write. And so I did write it thinking I was going to help people. And then when I hit that roadblock, I thought, you know what, maybe we're done. And I'm okay with that. And then that one young man changed everything.
So interesting. First, I think there's a note for people in that to go, stay open, stay curious, right? Like your feedback, your yeses and nos can come from so many different places. It's just about listening and about being curious and staying open and not closing down on possibilities, but also that there is I'm trying to think of the best way to say it, but basically that there is something in being really mission oriented, something in being service oriented, something in it being bigger than you, right? Being something about contribution to the greater good. That is...
I agree. No, I agree completely. And I don't know if people set out and think that way. I know this is your mission with your podcast, but I'm really sort of a no-holds-barred person. I'm a very direct person. And I've had a lot of ups and downs, and I've been very honest about those. And I did it because that's who I am.
Yeah.
And then I found that by doing that, I started getting notes from people, and it made a difference to them.
Yeah.
So then I felt, and I've always felt like, even from a young kid, I'm like, no, I'm going to do something bigger than me. But I think being of service, I think even if you're, whatever you do, I think you're in service, to be honest. If you run a company, if you're working in a brick and mortar store, you're of service. You don't have to be doing a service job to think you're in service of others, because every time you interact with someone, probably affects them.
And being willing to walk away, right, ultimately is the greatest service, right? Because it's of service to yourself and what you believe in.
Right. And I think that sometimes could be the hardest, especially for women, because we're so used to taking care of others that, sometimes we don't take care of ourselves. And at some point you run out of, your soul gets sucked dry by doing that. You have to take care of yourself.
And you're not going to break the glass ceilings if you're not willing to ruffle some feathers, if you're not willing to not people please, right?
Yeah. I mean, look, there's so much built in society that you're not even aware of. But I would say I've always believed that if you do, this is a bit naive and Pollyannish, but it's true. You do a really good job, and if you're really smart and you work really hard, that cream rises. and that holding on to that doesn't mean that people won't try to take you down or say negative things. It happens, and it constantly happens, but that also doesn't mean that you can't do it. And
write that down. Write that down, everybody. Write that. If you're driving, pull over and then write it down. Yes.
I mean, it doesn't take away the negativity.
It doesn't. And especially the way the, social structures is the way that I will put it. Especially as a woman, the odds are oftentimes going to be stacked against you. You're going to have to deal with a lot of those constraints and limitations and pushing back, and not to let it define you.
Right. I mean,
or what's possible for you.
Look, I was the CEO of Pets.com, and when it failed, not right away, I don't think I realized the weight of it, but there was so much negative press and negative things happening to me socially. I did let it define me. And even when I look at pictures of myself back then, my shoulders are down, and it was a really dark time. And at some point, I think everyone does, but for me personally, at some point, I had to make a decision. What kind of life was I going to live? Let that define me all my life?
Yeah.
And it really became almost like one day. I always think of that in Moonstruck with Cher snaps.
Snap out of it.
Snap out of it. I had to do it that's exactly that line. I had to do it to myself almost. Like, okay, stop. If I continue on this path, every day is going to be a negative thing as opposed to something that is full of possibilities. And I had to go through that journey and just say, okay, I'm done. And here's the cool thing about that, which I didn't know. But Pets.com was such a public failure, and I did let it affect me way too long. But when then I took the risk to start the RealReal, I didn't have any fear of failure. It was almost like, no, I've been through the fire.
You were immune to it at this point.
I had been through the fire. I had emerged, and it might fail, it might succeed, and I'm okay with whatever, because it will not define me anymore, because I'm bigger than what I do.
I mean, first of all, who hasn't felt that way at some point, right? Like, it reminds me of a scene in a movie. Oh gosh, what is the name of that movie? Forgetting Sarah Marshall.
I love that movie.
Me too. And Jason Segel is talking to Mila Kunis's character and saying, like, basically, like, there comes a point when your heart is so broken, like you're impervious to pain. He was going through a breakup in the movie. Like, nothing can hurt me now because I've been so hurt. And in a way, it almost makes you a superhero, right? It's like your kryptonite becomes your superpower.
Well,
right?
It does. It's just if you're emotionally hurt and you don't get hurt again, you're probably emotionally stunted. But it's a little different.
But the agency that you had in that moment is so powerful.
And it never went away. It was almost like, okay, people start, I know I'm a risk taker. When you take a risk, some things work out, some things don't. And if you switch your mindset, which I had to do, to this is a learning experience, and it doesn't matter what the outside world thinks about it. But if I lose or if I fail, I've learned a lot. At least I took the risk. At least I pushed through the fear. And it was switching it. It really was a complete mind shift. And by the way, once I made that shift, I never went backwards, which I think is great. I mean,
the rubber band never unstretched.
It never did.
Yeah.
And it was one of those wonderful gifts that failure and public failure gave me that I would not want anyone else to go through.
Well, it was an expansion in consciousness, and you embodied it, and it never left. But it's interesting. Like, the question that I have around that, especially for the people that are listening, is the snap out of it moment that you had. Those moments never work unless you take ownership over them. But what perpetuated that moment for you? Was it a deep look in the mirror moment? Were you in therapy and something in that pulled the trigger?
It wasn't therapy. It was, I think what had happened was I was offered, there's two big catalysts. One is every job I was offered was soul-suckling bad after Pets.com. And it was sort of like I was getting the dregs, and I'm meeting people that I would never want to associate with or work with. They just, and I felt I could go on that path and make money, but I couldn't because I felt like I was being drained on a spiritual level. And
the
then
power of no.
it really felt I was being drained. And then the other thing is, there's probably 3 big moments. Another one was a recruiter I'd met with, and I expressed this frustration. And he said, look, you had a big failure in pets. The other jobs you've done since then are really not great. No one's going to hire you and offer you a good job. And I was like, oh, and it was harsh, but honestly, it wasn't wrong. It wasn't wrong. And so then I had to say, okay, there we have it. What I thought is undeniable. What am I going to do with that? And then there was all these things are additive. One other moment, which was sort of fun because they all filter in. I'm at a baseball game with a friend who's a woman, deep statistician, all right? So she's recording, who knows why, but she loved all the stats. She had her whole thing. She loved recording the stats for the game. And at that point, and I'm not a big baseball, I love all sports, but I'm more of a basketball, football person. So I'm sitting there, and she's loving this batter, and this guy's coming up, and I think pretty sure the San Francisco Giants were losing. She's like, no, they've got the right lineup, and she knew, the lineup, they're going to be great. And she goes, he's got I think she said it has a .34 batting average. And for some reason, and she goes, this is great, we're going to kill it now. And for some reason, I'm like, it's a simple thing. That means he misses 66% of the time. And this guy's great, considered a great player. And I'm like, oh my God, I have one failure in my career, and I'm letting that out of all the things I've done. And it was sort of like, and I knew for a fact that the more I lived with letting other people define me, the more I would then live it the next day. And it was sort of everything came to a grinding halt. I mean, what also helped was a lot of exercise and being around artsy people and normal things just to keep your body going and pull yourself out of this funk. But it really was coming to a point. And then I kept thinking, this is a little dark, but it doesn't matter. My mom's life was over at 36 because she had multiple sclerosis. She was misdiagnosed at the age of 28. At 36, she had her first attack that could be diagnosed properly. So at 28, she already had 4 kids, and I was the oldest because that's what women did then. She dropped out of college to marry my father, and anyway, by 36, I'm 16. She's 36. Think how young that is. It's such a young age. And she lost control of her right side, and she went temporarily blind, which she ended up getting some vision back and some movement back because she had intermittent recession. So she sort of kept going down a hill. By the age of 52, which is when it was probably in my 50s, but at the age of 52, she had to be completely in a home, 24-hour care, and they kept resuscitating her, even though she had a do not resuscitate because she couldn't feed her, so she couldn't do anything. And I'm thinking, I have such a gift in my life because I've got great health. I have great energy. I've had one failure, and it wasn't just me taking it in. The press was beating me up. There were social people in social settings that were like treating me weirdly, but it didn't matter because I kept thinking, this is it, baby. This is it. You got one life. And look at what it could have been. It could have been a terrible, debilitating disease that, so when you
Perspective.
oh my gosh, when you have it, and, she knew, and by the way, at the age of 36, because I was 16 then and a lot older than the youngest, who was 8. She knew then. She's like, this is it. Because there was no cure, nothing they could do to try to slow it down, although she tried a lot of experimental things. And I don't know, everything came together. And I thought, they never, and the press was brutal. And I thought, you know what, the press never covered the men the way they covered me. They never covered other founders that had to shut their company down. And, they do what they do. What I didn't realize until the recruiter told me that, it was like, the whole industry had turned against me. And that was another moment. It was like, okay, they turned against me. Well, I got to figure something out. And it just all came together. And I thought, life is too precious to let these people take control of my life, which I was letting them do. That's the sad thing. I was letting it. But you can't go backwards. So
talk about a look at me now moment, right? Of looking in the mirror and going, nobody else is going to decide what's possible for me. Nobody else is going to decide my worth, my potential, my value, my ability to continue to make a contribution. And in that moment, I just want everybody to imagine if you had closed the book on yourself, what the world would have missed out on in terms of your later contributions because you didn't give up and you continued to self-advocate.
But can you imagine what my life would have been like?
Hello.
I can't.
Hello.
No,
this
I
is the
can't.
conversation.
No, I can't. So
it is unthinkable, really. And so I just want everybody to embody that when they look in the mirror about whatever they have accomplished or not accomplished at that point. Like, don't ever close down to what's possible and to what's coming and to your potential.
So I was 51 when that hit, by the way. So it wasn't young. And so the other thing I found when I really looked at it, so one of the gifts my parents gave me was from a very early age. Whenever, before I was even in kindergarten, I'd ask them a question and they'd always say, well, you're smart. What do you think? All the time. And that went on me. I think it sort of backfired when I was a teenager because they're like, what do you know? It's like, wait a minute,
You're
smart.
the one who always told me I'm smart and to think for myself and for all of you. Yeah.
But, I carried that positive thinking, because, a girl in science class is not really that cool. Then, there's always, I was always aware, even as a kid, of friction or people like not giving me the same respect as a young boy or a young man in college. But it didn't matter because I was like, no, I've got this. I'm smart. I can figure it out.
Yeah, let's look at
I lost it. I totally lost it and bought into all of it.
So let's because I totally broke my own format because it's you sitting here with me and you're worth breaking the format for. But let's go back to your past. Okay, so take us back to I was born.
All right. So I'll do it really fast.
Yeah.
But, so I grew up in South Bend, Indiana. Both my mother and father met at art school. So it was called the Chicago Academy. It was later merged with the Art Institute.
Okay.
But my dad wanted to be a commercial artist, not a fine artist. My mom dropped out to marry my dad. She wanted to be a fashion illustrator.
Go
oddly
figure.
enough.
Uh-huh.
And they had me within 10 months of getting married. And then had marital problems, separated for a while. I mean, they were kids. He was 22, she was 20. Got back together, had 3 more kids. So my father started his own business, his own art and design company when he was 29. And that was the same year that my mom ended up in the hospital about 9 months after her last child, the youngest, my youngest sister, Sherry, which, by the way, MS does present like that with big hormone fluctuations. But, of course, she was misdiagnosed, but they said she was dying. So my dad had just started his own business. He had the youngest child 9 months, the oldest one 8. And they said she had encephalitis and it had gone too far and she was going to die. But she didn't die. She ended up having weird symptoms until she had another full-blown attack. So, but I have to say, they're both artists. My dad did start his own art and design company. He had clients like Alka-Seltzer and Flintstones and One A Day and Chevrolet and even Studebaker and Kohler. So it was a lot of business-to-business work, promotional, not ads. But he did, whenever he shot like a brochure or something, the whole neighborhood would be invited to be in it, especially if it was a car scene and they were shooting, you know, so like everyone was a model. If you were in the neighborhood, you had a possibility to be a child model. I used to, which is really fun to get people involved in your business. I used to model for Shakespeare rod and reels when I was like 3 and 4. But honestly, everyone, if you were a kid and a shoot called for a kid, everyone could be a model for a day and then be
so great.
Isn't that fun?
Yeah.
And so he had a successful art and design business. And when I went to high school in Mishawaka, Indiana, we'd moved out to the country, went to Purdue, started in pre-pharm. I wanted to be a pharmacist, probably somewhere in the back of my mind to solve MS, you know, as a kid things.
Yeah.
But I did want to go into drug development. And then I started doing my boyfriend's homework, and he was really struggling in marketing, and I was killing it, just killing it. So I switched my career. So I was doing all of his homework. I switched my major to business and graduated in business, and then went to the Clorox company as the second undergraduate they ever hired in brand management. So that's the long story. So, you know, when you have a family that's full of artists, and my dad was very active. We all had motorcycles. We had go-karts, but we even skied, which is hard to do in Indiana. We skied Michigan, which is sort of funny. If you ever see like little mountains up there, they're all icy. That's not really skiing, but we all went skiing anyway. But then you have someone who's getting perpetually sick. So it's like this huge contrast.
Yeah.
But anyway, I went to Clorox, and after getting promoted once, getting ready to get promoted again, the guy in finance had smuggled in a computer back then, a personal computer, and run the first spreadsheet, because everything we were doing was hand calculated back then. And he's like, watch this. 3 months later, I get a call, and it was like magic. I'm like, this is the future.
It just tickles me.
It was like,
yes.
I was like, this is the future. That my former boss's wife called me to join a tech startup in the early 80s. So it was one of 4 software companies. And I went as a product manager. Within a year and a half, they said, who has a passport and wants to run international? So I went overseas with someone else to run it, someone more senior. He got fired. So I ran out of London international for a software publishing company and set up distribution all over the world, which meant I was traveling all over the world in my 20s, based out of London. And it was awesome. It really was awesome. I learned so much. I learned, obviously, I was all over the world, a lot in Hong Kong and Singapore, a little bit in Australia and New Zealand, but mostly in France and Germany. Germany was our biggest market, then France, a little bit in Spain and Italy. The Italians were the laggards, but they were fun to do business with. And then went off from there. When I came back to the States, so I did 2 international stints, a company that software publishing owned, spun off, and I joined them and ran domestic and international, went back overseas. I joined a company called Berkeley Systems, and Berkeley Systems was a company that started with screensavers, the flying toasters. This is way back when. And then I got promoted to president because the company was failing. I had to restructure. I had a plan.
She had a plan.
I presented it to the board, got promoted to president, then CEO. Then the founder wanted to sell it. Then went to another company as the CEO, the first site to sell movies online, called Real.com. Got that up to about $25 or $40 million. Hollywood Video, which is like not even an existing organization, a competitor to Blockbuster.
I remember Hollywood Video.
Bought the company with the goal of shutting down its internet distribution.
Oh boy. Wrong direction.
Which opened the door for Netflix,
Yeah.
which started
sure.
right around then. I remember talking to Reed. He goes, how long do I have before they come after me? I said, 20 years.
Oh, golly.
It's never going to happen.
Oh.
Then was offered the job to run pets.com, which was already going. And sort of, so it was like success. Oh, by the way, I forgot. I married in London, by the way. I forgot about that bit. So when I came back from London.
Is this the boyfriend whose homework you were killing?
No, someone else.
Okay.
No. In fact, I even write about, we did get engaged in college, just like my mom would have. And I dropped out of college for 6 months, for a semester, and worked at the United Auto Workers plant in Anderson, Indiana, as a bumper riveter. His dad was the GM of the plant, and his dad they were doing a lot of new implementation of technology. So I sort of would learn from his dad on the weekends.
Julie the Riveter.
I riveted. It was actually a phenomenally well-paid job but I also learned from, his name was Earl, from Earl about what was going right, what was going wrong, why technology wasn't being implemented, what he was going to do. I had this master class from my, at that point, fiance's dad, but I kept thinking my life would get smaller, and I called off the wedding 6 weeks before the wedding, re-enrolled at Purdue, got back on it. And
just that alone, by the way, like pause, right? Pause. I was 6 months away from getting married, and I called off the wedding and completely changed my life. I mean, it's like we could just take sound bites from the story all along the way and hear your inner awareness and your ability to advocate for those things, right? I mean,
but also think of it, societal pressure.
Yeah.
So, I mean, who gets married when they're 20? Right. And I'm sure it was sort of like, I don't even know. It never was in my head when I went off to college.
Yeah.
I know my mother had, but I mean, it was like, he was 4 years older than me. So he was getting this graduate degree. But when I look back, I'm like, of course I wasn't going to get married. I just got swept up in the whole.
But most people, when they're swept up, there's a momentum and they follow it through. But for somebody to go, I'm 6 months out from the altar.
It was 6 weeks.
Or 6 weeks. Oh my God.
Weeks.
6 weeks out from the altar.
Walking the invitations to the mailbox. I couldn't put them in. I did it. Every week I'd walk them over. I'm like, not today.
Oh my goodness gracious.
So that, you got to listen to those things.
You really do. But a lot of people don't. And I really am like, that right there is a differentiator, right? Between the people who do break the glass ceilings, right?
Most likely, yes.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean I don't go to the edge and then pull back.
Oh, sure. Sure. I mean, that tracks. But also you talked about the contrast, right? You talked about the contrast of mom would do well and then mom wouldn't do well, and then mom would do, and how that sort of was a, almost like a bipolar kind of experience of like highs and lows of like thriving and then just surviving. And I wonder if there's something in that journey that gave you the practice of being so resilient.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, absolutely, because rightly or wrongly, my dad asked me at the age of 8 to step up because my mom was going to die. And I was the oldest child, and I'd have to take on more responsibility. I was 8. If you think about an 8-year-old, when he was dying, literally on his deathbed, he apologized for that. He said, you were just a child. I never should have said that to you. Because I did, I did as an 8-year-old would do it. It's like, better be the adult here. Which
absolutely.
Is, if you look back, it's like, and I had brothers and sisters that were significantly younger. So I think, yes, it created resilience. It recreated grit, good problem solving skills, because my mother was in and out of being able to really be a mom, and all of that,
stepping into leadership,
and stepping into leadership, and shouldering more than but all of those things. But you wouldn't want anyone to go through that to get that experience. But yes, it had a positive impact, which I could tell my dad. I said, look, on the grand scheme of things, it all worked out.
I mean, it did. It really did. And there is a divine orchestration in all of it, but the rubber has to meet the road. And you really were able to pull yourself up by the bootstraps and
I mean,
get it done in the end.
But when you're that young and you're just like,
no, I mean, not even at that age, but I'm even talking about,
over and over
again, all the way through up until, we're talking about what happened circling back to this, moment where pets.com had collapsed. You're in a moment of, am I even going to be able to reinvent myself?
And my marriage collapsed.
And the marriage collapsed.
Yeah,
So this is happening.
Same day.
Hey fam, it's me, Alexis. Quick pause to shout out something that's not just a sponsor. It's my creation, Soul Sway Practice. This is the evolution of fitness. Think of it like microdosing your own neurochemicals, dopamine, serotonin, all the good stuff. No substances required. Soul Sway takes what's dulled and deadened and brings it back to life. It's multi-dimensional self-care, movement, mindfulness, meditation that lets you actually hear yourself again because our lives are loud, compartmentalized, draining. This is your time to come back online, set to curated and kick-ass soundtracks and cinematic backdrops that help remove the outside noise to tune into what matters most, you. This is your time, your practice, your life. Let's make it yours. With subscription-based classes, on demand, or courses, design your practice to not only fit, but enhance your life. Go to soulswaypractice.com and use code LAMN50 for 50% off your first month or year. You're welcome.
We'd been married 8 years, and certainly the company put pressure on it. And he was also British, living in the U.S., which I think was a little harder for him than he probably recognized when he first came over, because we're so capitalistic. It's more about what you do than where you're born, what your born rank is, or what school. Although it is sort of what school you went to, but
your pedigree, yeah.
But it was harder for him in the U.S. And so the marriage was under pressure. And at some point, he was the only child, and his mother was one of those World War II moms that really stood up and came into her own. And since he was her only child, and whenever she would say, well, what happened, what's going on, I would never say anything negative. I would always be positive. It was her only child. And she was a lovely woman. When he came over to say, look, she passed. And he said, I don't know. I know I ran away when things got tough. And that's a terrible trait I have in myself, and I can't get over it. So that happened about 5 years after the divorce. He just ran away. So that was bad. So I had no husband, no job, and here's the other thing which only women would relate to. I was 42. We hadn't had kids. And I'm like, wow. And I went through 2 years of, do I have any eggs left? Do I want to be a single mom? And I kept, do I want to have a child do I want whatever? And do I want to adopt? And I came to the conclusion that I didn't want to do it on my own. And rightly or wrongly, because I had that responsibility as a young kid, but I sort of felt like I raised kids, even though they weren't my own.
Yeah.
But I have to say, it was not an easy decision, because it sort of hit at that time where you're like, okay, the clock, maybe it was already gone. I don't know.
Yeah. So
I had to deal with that, and made a conscious decision not to have a child. And so
a lot of grieving. It's like the perfect storm, like
it was
coming from three directions, like just colliding.
Which is probably why it took me so long to realize that my career was over. Because I had a lot going on there.
A lot to sift through.
A lot to
unpack.
But honestly, once that went through, I don't know. I think, then I had to deal with where I was and my decisions and what had happened. And that's where I had to really go deep inside to figure out what I wanted from my life, the rest of my life. So it was a big one. Sometimes when I talk about it, I get really upset, but because it was so dark. And I keep thinking the more you talk about it, the more you relive it. So especially if you get into specifics, but it was very, very dark. And then it wasn't.
Well, I always say as dark as you go is as light as you go, right? Everything is equilibrated scientifically, right? Like what goes up must come down, equal distance.
Right.
For day, there's night. For yin, there's yang, right? For light, there's shadow, equal parts. So, it's a blessing and a curse, I guess I would say, that it went so dark because then it got so light.
Right.
So
I have to say something that was
Yeah.
interesting. Someone asked me yesterday, when's the last time you've been afraid? And I said, emotionally afraid? I can't remember. Afraid of doing something new? I can't remember anymore at all. Physically afraid? Oh, sure. I've been in, some perilous situations.
Sure.
But other than that, no, I don't even remember. Which is wow. I mean,
Which
to me, it was like,
I mean, isn't that part of the gift of the dark night of the soul?
Yes.
Once you are
Yes.
through it,
if
right?
you get through it, yes.
Yes. But this is sort of the importance of telling the story, right? Even revisiting the dark, the importance of it is to be in service for people that can't see the light
Right.
in their own lives. And that is such a gift.
I opened the book with something that is pretty profound, but it's a weird story. So I do want to tell it because it's something I didn't remember, but my father told me. And when I was when I was sitting by his deathbed. So, he was, and well, actually it was a couple months before I knew he was going to die. I don't know how I knew. I'm like, I have to spend some time with you because I don't feel good about what, he goes, you think I'm going to die, don't you? And I go, I do. And he's like, well, you better come then. So he said when I was probably 3, we lived on a lake in Kalamazoo, Michigan. And he used to come home from working, but then he was working for someone else. He was working for the Shakespeare Rod and Reel Company. Mm-hmm. And he would come home and ski in his suit, like a hot dog moment. Just think of like a 25-year-old guy.
So great.
Who loved to water ski. He'd just like roll up his pant legs, take off his jacket, undo his shirt a little bit, still have the tie on, have someone pull him around the lake on a boat and do on trick skis. He had trick skis, so he was a little hot dog. And but one night when he was doing that, it was probably his release, right, to get out of work.
Sure.
He's like, I'm gonna blow off some steam. And I walked off the dock watching him. My mom wasn't anywhere around, so I had like every doll I owned. And he saw me walk off the dock, but he didn't see me pop up. So he got back there. He got back to the dock as soon as he could, and the dolls are gone. And he's like, oh my God, she's dead, right? She's drowned. And he looked under the dock, and I'd pulled myself up, and I was like holding on with my head above the water. So I had saved myself. And he said, and he didn't even, he goes, you can't remember the story. I go, no. He goes, well, I thought you were dead then. And obviously you saved yourself. And when I thought about it, my father was one of those guys that loved a good story, but he wasn't necessarily that introspective, until literally it was on death's door. He said a few profound things. He was sort of that generation. Like,
Sure.
Why talk about it? Why look inside?
Yeah.
You may pull something out you don't want to look at.
Totally.
And anyway, my bet is he told me that to recognize that we all have what we need inside to save ourselves. It is a story about saving yourself. And he had seen me do it with the RealReal too. So it's sort of like, no, you got it. You can save yourself. And I thought, but we can all save ourselves. You may not know it. And certainly, how could a 3-year-old know it? But, you can. You've got everything you need inside of you. You may not be able to access because fear is clouding your anxiety. But that doesn't mean it's not there if you can quiet yourself. I don't know. I took it to a very profound level when he told me the story.
Honestly, like, I can quit my job. Like, let's just replay what you just said over and over and over again for people, because that is the essence of what I believe everybody is searching for. Like, no kidding. Like, the $1 billion self-help industry. If people could just really understand Like, seriously, like rewind the podcast like 2 minutes and listen to that again, right? Like, it's like when you're scrolling Instagram and they say something profound and then they go, read that again. Like, roll that back, because that's it. We all have everything that we need inside of us. We came in with all of the instructions. Like, we're not missing anything. And so often we're searching outside of ourselves for our value, for our worth, for what we think we're missing. And it's a futile search, because it's not outside of you. It's not outside of you. You know, you came in alone, you're leaving alone. Everything that happens in the middle, you're going through it alone. You inside of your skin. Nobody else is in there with you. It is you and you. And it's all in there. And it's not to say that like relationships aren't worth having or stuff isn't worth having, but it really is all about the experience that you have alone inside of your skin, and all of it is in there.
And you just have to stay quiet enough to access it.
That's it.
And you have to get away from letting fear, anxiety, any of those negative emotions really trigger, so you can't relax. You really do have it. I mean, sadness can do
you have
grief.
Practices that you do this with?
No, but I have to. All right, this is going to get really weird, and I think it's you.
You're bringing
it out.
There's no such thing as weird. Not here.
You're bringing it out. It hasn't happened for a while, so I'm just going to say this, but I remember the first time it happened. So let's talk about the first time it happened. I was walking, I'm walking through campus. It was a beautiful fall day. Beautiful. I probably was done with classes. And as I walked, I literally left my body. I reconnected with everything. I knew I was part of everything. I knew I was part of the trees, the air, that I was just a particle. I felt complete unity with. Now, I wasn't on drugs. I wasn't meditating. It happened spontaneously. And it didn't last long, but it was so profound. And I would say it's happened spontaneously multiple times in my life. If I meditated, maybe I could conjure it up, but I don't. And so I would say somehow there was another experience when I was really young, but somehow these things really informed me in a big way. And I don't know if there's a God, but I do believe there's something
a higher power.
There's something
of some sort,
deeply higher power and deep consciousness that we can all. I mean, I experienced it. I did experience.
I have too.
Which people, go on. They take mushrooms or whatever they do to get there. But for me, it's happened without an outside aid, and I knew it then. And once you experience that once, you never forget it. And it's sort of that actually probably when I'm quiet enough and I'm not operating out of fear or anxiety, which I did for a while, then I can access that. And I even believe the RealReal, once I pulled it, I feel like I accessed it down from some collective consciousness.
Yeah, I believe that.
That other people, I also knew that if I'm accessing it, other people are going to access. And sure enough, 4 other companies started in the resale business within 3 months of me starting mine. But I do believe there's something bigger that we can access.
I couldn't agree more.
Okay, I know it sounds pretty woo-woo. But
no, I started a company called Soul Sway Practice with I'm a master embodiment teacher and another master embodiment teacher that I worked with for a long time at a global female empowerment company. We started it together. And literally it is recreating that process for people. It's plugging the soul into the body and giving people access to almost like what you're talking about, like a microdose, but without any substances. And it is a way of accessing that deeper truth and freedom and possibility and potential in your soul body.
Yes. So, that started me when it first happened. That started me on a huge path of reading about other people that have done it. I talked to a philosophy professor who I think because I was at Purdue, maybe it was a little too much, but it did start me reading and trying to understand because I knew what I'd experienced was honest and truthful.
Yes.
You know, I wasn't overly tired.
That level of truth you cannot deny.
No, you can't, because it's like, it's so cosmic and it's so powerful. And so it did start me in that journey of really trying to understand.
Once you've seen that, you can't not go down the rabbit hole. You know, you have to be Alice in Wonderland at that point. You've got to just go take the pill and go on the ride. Like, you're always going to be curious about it, and you're always going to like, it's like, once you get a taste of it, you have to go further and you have to go deeper. And it's as much going into yourself and listening to yourself and being curious about yourself and knowing yourself, as much as it is like looking into existential truths. I think it's both. Like, as deep as it goes in is as deep as it goes out. But it's like, once you sort of have that aha moment or that awakening or that epiphany or whatever you want to call that moment that you had, it's like, wow, this is profound, and I'm more and more available to it.
Right. Yes. And
yeah.
So, you know, all these things sort of add up, though, which
Totally.
I think are, you know, it's really fascinating.
Totally.
And honestly, I never forget that we're all connected. It's all energy. That we're no different, oddly enough, than the plant you have here.
I completely agree with
Yes,
you.
it's complete
that is that, but that
energy.
is science, right?
That
This goes
is
back
science
to
now.
you
That is science
being the
now.
person that was interested in science and wanted to pursue science. And my dad was a doctor, and there's a part of me that's very scientific. And then my mom was a psychologist turned badass businesswoman. And that's the side of me that's very into human behavior and also into entrepreneurship. And you know, we are a product of our environments.
Yes,
also,
absolutely.
that's in our DNA. It's in our genealogy, right? And so I totally get the scientist in you, right? That's like able to think in those terms, right? And to
Right.
look for those things. And it's just such a trust fall, right?
It is.
It's
It
such a
is.
trust fall.
It is, but it doesn't feel like it. It feels like this is, and it always has been, and now you know.
Yes.
You know, it's one of those.
Yes,
I know.
yes, yes. And, you know, for everybody that's listening, it's like there has to be a certain amount of allowing that.
Yes. Well, I mean, I didn't know I was allowing it. Let's just put it that way, because it like I said, especially in my 20s, it happened spontaneously multiple times.
Yeah.
And it still meets. I mean, there's still times when this is not the same thing, but it's certainly related. If you walk in a room and you're like, this isn't my room, the energy, you could feel the energy. Or if you're
Absolutely.
standing by, I mean, I remember standing behind someone in a line checking into an airplane. I'm like, I'm going to move lines. There's something not right here. Because that whatever was happening
Intuition.
with that person, no, I could literally feel their
Yeah.
energy that I
Intuition
didn't want to be around
is
it.
and the energy perception and just being tuned into it. But I don't think there's a person in here like we're all in a room together. Oh my goodness. That's how like energetically close I feel with the audience. Like there isn't a person that's listening or to this or watching this that hasn't ever either walked into a room and had that energetic sense of something is off here, or even just seen a loved one or a friend walk in the room and
you
before they
know.
ever said a word, you know the energy they're bringing. You know if they've had a shitty day.
Right.
You know if they're in a great mood. You know, you can sense it. And it's part of our gift, I believe, and that we all have. And it's about nurturing that gift and, strengthening it like you would strengthen your abdominal muscles by doing crunches.
No, you're right. No, you're right. This
Okay.
is the wildest. I'm kind of blown away by this podcast.
Oh,
this
yay.
conversation. Yeah.
I know. I feel like these are the conversations people need to be having more of. Like, anyway, that's just me, everybody. But if you're listening to this, you're probably into it. So if you've gotten this far, don't go anywhere. We're not done. Okay. So I would love to actually like bring us around to, so you've like, is there anything further that you want to say about like the creation of the RealReal?
Oh, gosh. I mean, I think look, when I did it, oddly enough, when I made a decision, I was either going to I put my house in the market because I was worried that I was going to run out of money. But that was sort of my plan B thing. But I would say when I started the RealReal, first I did an analytical map of, I knew I wanted to go back into e-commerce. I analyzed what Amazon could do and couldn't do. And one of the areas that I knew they couldn't do was luxury. But I thought, oh, I'm never going to create a luxury brand. So I was exploring different options to go in to create a commerce business around it. And every path I was taking, it was like, no, I won't. There's no moat around that. No, I won't be able to create a brand. No, I'm not the one to do that. And then when I was shopping with my girlfriend, who was in this beautiful boutique that had full price shoes in it, full price beautiful shoe. It was called Head Over Heels, so it was a shoe shop. In the back, there was a little bit of consignment of everything, and she was a great merchant, so it was beautifully displayed. And my girlfriend shopped there, not in the front of the store. And this is someone who I'd never seen go into a consignment store. And we get out, and I like start quizzing her. Like, would you ever shop at a consignment store? No, they're too weird. Would you ever shop on eBay? No, too many fakes. I don't want to deal with it. I'm like, have you ever consigned? She said, never. I said, you just bought previously on things. She goes, who cares? I got, Gucci, Louis Vuitton, Prada at a great price. Who cares? She goes, I trust the owner. They're, she knows they're not fake. She knows who the buyer, she knows the person that gave them to her. And I thought, okay, that was it. That was my luxury play that Amazon couldn't replicate. So even though I'd shut it down originally, it was still parked in my brain somewhere. Mm-hmm. And when I had that moment to when I launched the whole business was 5.5 months.
Wow.
And so all I would say is, like, for people thinking about starting a business, you do have to, if you don't know what you want to do, you do have to pick a lane. I picked e-commerce. You have to pick what you want to go into, look at the competition, put some things in your brain, and let the idea come to you. It was methodical, but then it wasn't. Then it was like, that's it.
Yes.
Be open to that spark.
Somebody says leave room for magic, right?
And that's exactly what happened.
Yes. So create the runway.
And then
build it and they will come.
And then I started as fast as I could getting it out, because remember I said when it's in the collective I thought, if I've got this idea, multiple people are going to get it.
Yep.
And then it's how fast you execute.
That's it.
And how well.
Yep.
And so that's where I started, and I just ran as hard as I could. In the first year, we did 10 million in sales. And then I started raising venture capital. But even to get that 10 million of people buy the book, it wasn't easy. Anyway, it was hard. Every step of the way was hard, because I did need to raise a little bit of money. And there was this new platform that was so cool called Angel List. And I thought, first time ever, and qualified investors, you could post your startup, have meetings without the VC world and the seed investor. So I put my business forward, and the founders are like, no one's interested in this business. And they wouldn't let me on the platform. They had curated their platform, like, no one's going to want this business. So then I called a friend and I said, Peter, I can't believe it. He goes, all right, what you need to do is get this guy, Dave McClure, who was running 500 startups. He's really tight with the founders. Now, Dave McClure had been a consulting engineer for me at my other company at Real.com. But now he was running a startup for 500 startups, a VC-backed company. And they said, no, get Dave to invest $25K and you'll get on the platform. He'll build it up and he'll convince them. So I started getting in touch with Dave, and it took I chased him for probably 6 months. He kept saying, oh, I'll do it, don't worry. And he didn't do it. So finally, when he did it, he then did announce it on this group, Angel List. Then they let me in, and then I raised $1 million almost overnight because of that. But can you, first of all, I didn't say, I didn't stop chasing Dave.
No, this is on I always say being a mother or being an entrepreneur is not for sissies.
It is.
You have to be consistent. You've got to show up every damn day, and you have to want it and fight for it, like with every ounce of your being, even when you're dead tired, even when it's not working out the way you want it to, even when you're pulling your hair out and you feel like you're going to collapse into pieces on the floor and like Humpty Dumpty, nobody's gonna be able to put you back together. You got to do it. You got to do it.
And so thanks to Dave McClure.
Shout out, Dave. We love you, Dave.
And me doing what I had to do. And, you know what?
Anybody who's ever bought anything on the RealReal, send Dave a love letter.
Yeah, wherever he is now. I don't know.
Yeah.
He left 500 startups. But it was one of those things because you don't want to be like so pushy, but you want to be, okay, come on, Dave.
Yeah.
And then I was enlisting this guy, Peter, like, okay, Peter, now you need to
Yeah.
also go after Dave.
Takes a village.
And who knew if it would even work, this strategy?
Yeah.
But it did work. It did work. His
It
25K unlocked another $1 million of
It
investment.
did. It not only worked, it rocked the fashion industry.
And that was the first big money that came in.
God bless. And then it's this big, booming, thriving business.
It's over, yes.
And
I got it to over $1 billion in
God
top line
bless.
revenue.
And it goes public.
Yes, I took it public.
And
yes.
then you decide to step down.
No, I didn't. I got fired by the board.
Did?
In 2022, yes.
What is wrong with people?
Well, here's my theory, because you don't know why.
I love a theory.
So here's my theory.
Lay it
and
on
part
me.
of it's factual. There's one, the last money in guy didn't. So let me just back up. All of my investors, so after we got the 1 million, the next one was a institutional round, a real VC round. And everyone that put in money, or the top people that put in money, got a board seat or a board observer seat. So my board of directors were investors in the company. And they'd been with me for a long time. They'd seen it go from 10 to 25 to 50 to 100 to 200 and 50 to 500, 750. So they were with me through the ride, building out infrastructure, processes. The last money in before we went public was one PE guy. And I don't want to mention his name because it will get stuck in my throat in an ugly way. And he didn't. So every other investor post-public, within about a 6 months, a year time frame, got off the board because they could then freely sell their stock without SEC restrictions.
Sure.
They were no longer an insider. Mm-hmm. And, everyone has investors they have to answer to.
Sure.
So they get off, which meant I had to start recommending new board members. Bad on me. I recommended board members that were just a complete value not hit. But this one guy didn't get off. In fact, he's still running for the board. And the stock fell during COVID. And so he went from, could have made a lot of money if he would have gotten off the board, to being underwater.
Sure.
My bet is, because, it really is either sex or money, and it's usually money that motivate people. He started a campaign against me with the new board members, and I didn't build. A man told me this. He goes, the problem with you, Julie, you put on board members you thought would add to the company. Men put on board members that support them. So, look, I didn't help myself because he lied about something flagrantly in the board. And before that, I had a new CFO. He kept saying, something's not right. This guy and this guy, they're working against you. I can tell you. And this guy was more political. And
This is like Succession.
Well, I didn't. Oh, yeah. I didn't know the CFO if he was astute or paranoid. Turns out he was astute. I just started working with him. He's very talented. Was excited to have a new CFO on because he was more experienced than the prior one. And he's like, no, something's not right. So already he's like, he's got a worm in my brain. And then this guy just blatantly lies about something. And I just call him on it with very choice cuss words. And then the other people on the board's like, you can't talk to a board member like that. I'm like, I can when he's lying. Anyway, it turned out to be very ugly. And then who knows what he was telling them. And there certainly was, in anybody's, as a leader, there's always issues that you could say, you either give them some rope and let them continue, or you're like, you know what, this is fireable. And I had a lot of executive turnover during COVID, some of them for reasons like my CTO wanted to move back to Sweden. He'd been with the company 8 years. He didn't want to live in the U.S. during COVID. They had kids. They wanted to live someplace they could have a better life for their kids because the Swedish government did not close down like the U.S. government.
Yeah, I mean, say the word COVID and we all understand.
And his kids, and he wanted his kids back in school.
Yeah.
And, all right, so he left. I made a couple bad hires. So look, it was, the time was fraught. So they could get me on, executive turnover. And yet, on average, my executive stayed with me 7 years. But there were things they could have got me on. Who knows what story he was telling them when I lost my shit on him, which no one likes to hear a woman get mad, and especially women. No one likes to see an angry woman. So let's just say the board relationships deteriorated after that.
Yeah, you can see the house of cards being built here.
And then about 4 months later, they fired me. And no reason given. One guy said, well, you didn't hit your numbers during COVID. And I basically laughed in his face. So, yeah, they fired me. And then they brought in a man who also got fired because, I won't tell you. But anyway, he got terminated with cause. And then the woman who actually was my first employee, we were going to have a succession plan in April. In August. I was fired in June. But you have to do succession planning, especially in a public company. I would have said, this is the person that should be running the company. She understands it. She understands the levers. She's so smart. She has phenomenal capacity. Her name's Rati Levesque, and now she's CEO. So I'm very happy about that. The interim guy, just to give you an idea of his qualifications, he'd never been a CEO before, never run a public company. The last company he was in, he was unemployed when they had it. Before that, he was part of the team that was at Neiman Marcus and helped run that to bankruptcy, even though he would say he left before they filed bankruptcy. But he was one of those guys that people, he was very a glad hander. He was a good guy, glad hander.
Sure.
But he did some things that got him terminated. So let's just say that if you're going to bring in the next ideal CEO, that person wouldn't have been most people's choices.
Sure.
But he knew a board member.
Well, it sounds like it corrected itself in the end. Thank goodness.
Thank goodness. And so I feel really good about that. And I say it in the book too, I was really tired after COVID. We had to do extraordinary things because the company isn't a self-posting site. We had to pick up things. We couldn't pick up things to keep the company going. We had to do extraordinary things to make sure no one died as an employee. We had to do extraordinary things. We also had a lot of mob robberies during that time.
Sure.
Black Lives Matter also hit during that time, which created a pallor in the company. We had, in general, the RealReal was something like, when I was there, 66%, 67% women, and mostly non-white. All right, so so there was a lot of tension. It was hard keeping people motivated. I'm not a germaphobe, so I was running all over the country with a mask on trying to keep people together. And, it was hard. So I was tired, without a doubt. Should they have looked for a new CEO? I think we might have had a conversation about it. But I was completely undermined, and I played into whatever narrative, I'm sure. Because, I had all new board members, really, except for that one guy. And no one, and by the time I did get fired, I was like, I had no respect. No one wanted to really know anything.
So, just in respect to the pets.com ending and this ending, was there a totally different reception?
Oh, sure.
Personally, it didn't bring you into a dark place.
Well, you grieve.
Sure.
I went through a grieving period, and
Sure.
I would visualize all the board members and something horrific happening to them. It made me sort of happy for a while. Like a visual, doll that I could put pins in.
And so this book was sort of a therapeutic.
Well, it was, but it wasn't. But yes, but that's not why I wrote it, because by the time I wrote it, I was past it. All right. And I really wrote it because I've read a lot of entrepreneur stories, and very few of them are that honest. They feel like they're a promo piece for the company or the person. And And I don't think it serves anyone to put that out there.
Yeah.
So I wanted to write a more honest book.
God bless.
And to talk about, because honestly, most of it, and I'm like, if you just look at it in retrospect, I was there almost, I think 12 years, and 99% was awesome. You know, that doesn't mean it was an easy ride.
Sure.
But the end wasn't what I wanted. But
Right.
that's a small part of the whole story.
Right.
And I kept learning lessons along the way. So I wanted to weave the lessons on and take people on the ride of creating a company. And like I said, if I would have read this ahead of time, I would have made different choices, especially on board choices.
And so we've looked at this massive like story of like the seeds and the roots, and we've looked at how things have blossomed and how things have been gotten gnarled and twisted and then ungnarled and grown and built these beautiful branches and leaves. So here we are in this present moment of like,
I know, it's
this-
another transition. Here
this
we go.
magnificent moment in the present. And so as we sit here and we look at what's now and what's next, what do you see?
Well, I'm going to focus on getting the book out. I do have a podcast to help entrepreneurs, which I'll be launching this summer. We're just working on it. It's called Armchair Entrepreneurs, and it's two of us, two other women and myself. So there's three of us together, and we give advice to people, more in the consumer world. So I'm business, tech, consumer, and then we have a fashion expert, then we have a packaged goods expert. So I really want to do that. And then after that, I'm not sure. How about that? So it's the first time
I love
ever.
the not knowing.
Well, I'm not really comfortable with not knowing, but that's
Really?
where I'm at. And it's good. It's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, because to me, the unknown means endless possibilities. Endless
I
possibilities.
know, but
Certainty. We want certainty. Our
Exactly.
humanness wants certainty.
Exactly.
But our spirituality knows no limits. And it's embodying both at the same time.
You really are that person.
I am.
I know.
I am. I really am. 100%. But so are you.
Well, I am, but I don't.
see it. I see it. I see the, what do my kids say? I see the aura. Okay, so I'm gonna ask you the
Yes.
final question that I ask everybody on this podcast,
Okay.
which is this. Go in, because you're so good at going in. I want you to imagine as you go inside yourself that you're looking in a mirror. This is your look at me now moment. This is the you that saved herself under the dock. This is the you that switched to business from doing the boyfriend's homework. This is the you that went through the pets.com collapse and the divorce. This is the you that built the RealReal. Like, this is the you that's sitting here with me now after all of these epiphanies and aha moments, successes, failures, contrasts. And as you're looking in this mirror with all the yous that you've been up into the woman that you are now, going, whatever I've done or not done, whatever I've gained or lost, I am worthy of love. I am grateful. I acknowledge myself. I validate myself. Like, nobody else gets to have eyes on me and judge who I am in this moment. Like, what is it that you have to say to that woman in the mirror?
It's great. It's great. I wouldn't have wanted it any other way. And I'm excited about what's next. It's really great. And I'm so thankful for so many things, including health. Maybe health most of all.
That makes sense.
Yes.
That makes sense. And by the way, for those of you who are not actually like watching this and you're just listening, you should have seen the full body joyful laughter that came through this woman when she just owned that it's great. It's great.
It is great.
It's great. It is great because we are here. We are alive. We get to.
Yes.
Like, and fill in the rest, right? We get to. If we just take everything in life and put the phrase I get to in front of it, it just creates such a sense of freedom and empowerment. It's just a little hack.
It's a good hack.
It's a good little hack.
It's a good hack.
And you've gotten to, and you've done so much. In my eyes, for not just commerce and industry and things like that, but for women. And again, I just want to say I'm so deeply grateful. And so for people who are out there listening and want more Julie in their life, I know I do, please go and get her book.
Oh, thank you.
Get her book. Time to Get Real.
Let me
Get Real.
Let me tell you how I wrote it, because at first I worked with a ghostwriter. I'm like, this is not going to work. I wrote it like we're sitting down today and I'm telling you a story.
Yeah.
That's really as simple as that. And I walk you through, I mean, it's basically, in fact, at some point I'm like, let me talk about this first off.
I love it.
So it really is more like I'm talking to a girlfriend about this
I love
story.
it. That's the way that resonates for me. So, I mean, I couldn't advocate for this book more. And how else can people reach you or be in touch with you, like to learn about the podcast that's coming out and stuff like that?
Gosh, Cable will be mad at me. The best way to reach me is at Julie, Julie, at shakkiventures.com. So it's SHAKTIVC.com. I'm not a VC. I'm an advisor to the fund, but that's sort of my go forward email. And I have to say that their early stage venture capital, they're sort of in a league of their own. So I'm really excited to be an advisor to their fund. It's run by a man who was on my board and one of the early investors in the RealReal. Cable Desai.
Still at it. She's still at it. Can't hold this one down.
I would
Julie,
hope not.
Thank you so much for being here, for sharing your story, for really being as real as you are. I mean, time to get real. The real. Julie is the real deal. And I'm so excited to share this episode with our audience. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Wow.
Everybody, I love you. You know I love you. You know I love you. I can't fake anything. So if I say I love you, I mean it. And I do. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Look at Me Now. We'll see you next time.
Join us for Look at Me Now, wherever you listen to podcasts, and be sure to share, like, and subscribe.